Hi everyone. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the chapter 4 story from the Ecce Romani textbook. So before we dive into it, you want to make sure that you've looked at all the vocab and that you've memorized as much of it as you can, so that when you read this, you're understanding a lot of what's going on just by recognizing the vocab. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you've looked at the grammar a little bit and that you've got that under control and understand it, because you're going to have a tough time translating if you're not sure how the words are interacting with each other or where's the subject. In this chapter, they're introducing direct objects to you, the accusative case. So you want to get used to a couple things. We'll point them out as we go, but the idea of nominative case and accusative case, right? Subjects and direct objects. You want to understand what they look like and what that means, how we use them to translate. Okay? So once you have that under control, we can dive in and start taking a look at this story and work our way through. So the first thing you want to do is, again, read this story. Let it wash over you. Make sure that you understand how all the words sound, how they look, and you're really trying to get used to the pattern, right? So you want to notice that whenever you have a word that ends in A, it's usually a subject. In this chapter, you're going to see words like corneliam or vocem or sextum, this different ending of am, em. You'll see that and catch it when you read it out loud to yourself. So make sure you start there. So just to do a quick refresher, though, on what we're talking about, in the grammar, you learned that a subject is the person or thing performing the action or doing something. In this chapter, they're introducing you to the idea of a direct object. Now, a direct object, you don't have to get too bogged down in the grammar. It's good to know that term. But it's basically someone that's receiving the action. A lot of your textbooks will say. That's kind of an abstract idea. What does that mean? The simpler way to think of it is a subject does something. A direct object has something happening to them. Right? So we call these the nominative and accusative case in Latin. And again, that's kind of grammar, a little jargon term there. But you want to make sure that you've got that under control, because almost every textbook you're going to pick up is going to reference nominative and accusative case. If you're having trouble remembering what they mean, just think nominative is the subject. You can think of the word nomen, which means name, right? The name of someone would be the subject. The accusative is the direct object. Okay, so those are interchangeable. You want to make sure that you've got those under control. But the basic idea is pretty simple. If I were to say to you, I throw the ball, you want to think to yourself, okay, who's doing something in that sentence? I am, right? I would be the subject. Then you want to stop and think, okay, is someone or something having, something done to it? If I say I throw the ball, you want to think to yourself, well, what's being thrown? Oh, the ball is. That's called the direct object, or the accusative case in Latin. So once you've kind of got that under control, you want to realize that now we have some different noun endings, right? So we saw, so far we've seen A and US. In this chapter, you're going to see the endings AM, em. There's a lot of endings happening now, right? There's a lot more, so don't get overwhelmed. But for now, this is a good amount of endings that you've seen, even 4 chapters in. You want to start to organize them. So in Latin, right, when we organize nouns and adjectives, we put them into groups that we call declensions. Okay, so I know there's a lot of terms coming at you: nominative and accusative case, subject, direct object, declension. You want to pause the video whenever you can, or take a look at my grammar video for this chapter and just start writing these things down and organizing it. But a declension is just a group, right? That's really what it means, just a group of nouns and adjectives, right? And we call them declensions. And we put 3 groups in Latin, right? 3 declensions so far that you've seen. There's actually 5 in the language, but you've seen 3 so far. So again, it's just a way of organizing ourselves. So if we were to write out a chart of all the noun endings we've seen, we'd put it like this: first, second, and third declension. It's a fancy way of saying first group, second group, and third group. And then on the left-hand side, we have nominative and accusative case. Remember, nominative is our subject. Accusative is our direct object. We have singular and plural. We haven't seen plural accusative yet, or plural direct objects. You'll see them in one of the next chapters. Okay, but if we were to organize ourselves, this is where we'd put the A and the US endings, right? The first group is the words that end in A in the nominative. The second group is the words that end in US. The third group, we're not sure yet. We've seen a few of them, right? Words like arbor, tree, but let's leave it off to the side for a second. We don't quite know what that ending pattern is, right? So let's just put a question mark for now. In this chapter, you're getting introduced to direct objects, right? The accusative case. These are those endings: am, and em. Am is first declension. So if you have a noun like puella that ends in an A, when you make it a direct object, it'll become puellam. And in second declension, a word that ends in us, take the name sextus, for instance. If something's happening to sextus, it becomes sextum as an accusative direct object. In the third declension, this is where you see the em ending, words like arborem or vocem in this chapter. So just recognize that the em ending is a direct object. It's in that third group. And we can also add in our nominative plural endings, which we've seen in previous chapters, AE and long. So now that you have the chart under control, again, you want to make sure that you put this in your notes, but keep it nearby. When you're translating the story on your own, ideally you'd have these memorized and you can kind of read the Latin without having to refer to the chart. And I'll give you an idea of how you want to do that in the next couple slides. But if you need it, keep this chart right next to you while you're going. It's always good to have a reference. You can look back and say to yourself, oh, yeah, Sarah was sent in the U.S. It's a nominative subject. Got it. Or what does the AE ending mean again, right? You want to have this chart nearby and continuously update it as we go through each chapter of Ecce Romani and we add more endings. You want to keep updating your chart, but have it nearby as a nice reference. It'll help you. But now we're ready to come back to the chapter story and start translating it, okay? But before we even dive into the translation, you want to start to recognize where are all these noun endings, right? Where are they? So if we were to take the story and highlight it in a slightly different way, if we put all the words that are nominative in red and all the words that are accusative in blue, it would look like this, right? And I think color coding the story is a really good idea. And you'll see I'll do it in every video I make after this. When you can see the story in a slightly different way with the colors, it'll help bring it to life and let you see like, okay, this is where my subject is. Got it. This is the direct object. Okay, so you always want to do that, or again, pause this video, take a look at it, whatever you need. But this will help you understand where the different pieces of the sentence are. And now you're ready to dive in and start translating. So let's take the first sentence of the story. You have sextus est puer molestus qui semper Corneliam vexat. If you're looking at the color coding, right, sextus with a US ending is a subject. Puer molestus is also the subject, right? Here, when you have the verb to be, both sides of the verb to be, is, or est in this case, are in the nominative case. So we're saying sextus is an annoying boy. That's my subject, right? On the other side, you have Corneliam. Now, the am ending should indicate to you that something's slightly different. The first 3 chapters we've been reading, it's always been Cornelia, right? Now it's Corneliam. Something's different about it. She's the direct object, right? Something's going to happen to Cornelia. She isn't doing anything is kind of the idea. So if we mark this up, now we can see where's my subject, where's my direct object. We can put it all together. You have sextus is an annoying boy, a puer molestus, qui semper Corneliam vexat, who always, semper, annoys Cornelia, right? Remember, in English, we always go subject, verb, direct object. So sextus, the annoying boy, is the person doing the vexating, if you want to think of it that way. He's the person annoying someone. So who's he annoying? Cornelia. So you always want to keep that word order straight and put it into your translation, right? Sextus is an annoying boy who always annoys Cornelia. The key part here, when you hear Corneliam, you want to understand she's not doing anything. Something is happening to Cornelia. She's not the subject. That'll help you with your translation. So now we can go back to the story and take a look at the translation and work through it. And remember, keep these tips in mind so that you can translate the rest of it. So looking at the full story, again, remember red is nominative, that's our subject. Blue is accusative, which would be our direct object. So we have sextus est puer molestus qui semper Corneliam vexat. Sextus is an annoying boy who always annoys Cornelia. Then we have Cornelia igitur sextum non amat. Cornelia, our subject, non amat, doesn't like sextus, right? Sextum is the direct object. Igitur means therefore, so you could say therefore Cornelia doesn't like sextus. Hodie sub arbore dormit Cornelia. So today, Cornelia is sleeping, right? Cornelia is the subject, dormit is our verb. She's sleeping sub arbore, under a tree. Sextus puellam conspicit et furtim appropinquat. So sextus is my subject. He catches sight of, conspicit, the puellam, the girl, right? So he catches sight of the girl, meaning Cornelia, and he stealthily, furtim appropinquat, approaches, right? So he stealthily approaches. Arborem ascendit et subito magna voce clamat. So he climbs the tree. You'll notice here in this sentence, there's no word in red, which is totally fine. It's still referring to sextus. So all the verbs are ending in T, meaning he, she, or it is doing something. So when you see ascendit and there's no explicit subject, meaning no word in red or nominative case, it means it's still referring to the subject from the previous line. So sextus climbs the tree. Arborem is my direct object, right? He climbs the tree, and suddenly he shouts, clamat. Magna voce is just saying how he shouted in a loud voice, right? So he shouts in a loud voice trying to scare her, is the idea. Vocem Cornelia audet, sed sextum non videt. So again, word order doesn't matter here. Look for your subject and your direct object by the endings, right? The endings are really what we're after in Latin. So when you hear vocem Cornelia, that should be a tip that Cornelia is your subject and vocem is your direct object. So it's saying Cornelia audet, she hears the vocem, the voice, but she doesn't see non videt sextus, right? Sextum here. That's the person she doesn't see. Magna vox Corneliam terret, sollicita est. So magna vox here, the big or the loud voice, that's my subject. You can tell because magna ends in an A, right? Vox doesn't end in an A or a US. This would be in that third declension, the third group. But vox just means voice. It's the nominative form of voice, right? So the loud voice frightens, terret, Cornelia, right? Corneliam, again, is the direct object. That's how we know she's not doing anything. Something's happening to her. Sollicita est, she is worried or anxious. Tum, Marcus ad arborem curret. So then Marcus runs toward the tree, ad arborem, right? He runs towards the tree. Marcus puerum molestum conspicit et clama descende sexte. Right, again, Marcus is my subject. He conspicit, he catches sight of something. Who does he catch sight of? Direct object is puerum molestum, the annoying boy. And he shouts, clamat, descende sexte, climb down sextus. So descende here is something called an imperative. It's a command. Don't worry about it for right now. Just think of it as a vocab term. It means climb down. Sextus is what we call the vocative case. A quick note, when you're calling someone by name or directly addressing someone in Latin, normally, right, if the name ends in an A, you're not going to change the ending. But if you happen to be calling someone whose name ends in a US, right, probably a man or a boy, in this case, sextus, you switch the US to an E. That's what's going on here. Don't get thrown off by that. Sexte is still sextus, right? It's only changing the ending because of the context. When we're calling him by name, we change the ending a little bit. But it says climb down or come down sextus. Sextus clamat. Marque, cur tu non arborem ascendis, right? So Sextus shouts, Marcus, why are you, tu, that's my subject, not climbing, non ascendis? And notice how ascendis ends in an S. That's our verb ending that means you are doing something, right? So he says, why are you not climbing arborem, the tree? Okay, so again, that one's a little trickier because the subject is to, so our verb ending flipped to an S instead of a T. It means you are climbing, and known is a negation. It means why are you not climbing? Arborem is the direct object, right, the tree. And then he says, nihil me terret, nothing frightens me. Me is the direct object. I'm seeing a typo here. That shouldn't be red, it should be blue. But he's saying nothing frightens me. Quid te terret, what frightens you? Okay, so Sextus responds by saying, I'm not afraid of anything. Why are you so afraid? Why are you so scared? Is kind of what he's going for here. So then the story continues. You have cave sexte, clamat Marcus, right? Cave is very similar to descende. It's a command, right? We call this an imperative. And Ecce Romani will introduce these to you in a later chapter. But cave just means be careful, right? Watch out. And again, sexte is vocative, right? Watch out, Sextus. He's calling him by name. Clamat Marcus, right? Marcus shouts. Marcus is your subject. Clamat is your verb. They go together because clamat ends in a T, right? He is shouting. So it says, be careful or watch out, Sextus, shouts Marcus. Then he says, rami sunt infirmi, right? The branches, rami is nominative plural. It's a plural subject, right? A singular branch would be ramus with a US. So when we make it nominative plural, it becomes rami, right? And you'll notice too how it's sunt instead of est. Sunt means they are instead of est, which would be he, she, or it is. So the NT verb ending is telling you you've got a plural subject, right? Rami sunt infirmi. The branches are weak. And again, whenever you see the verb to be, both sides of the verb to be are in the nominative case. So in other words, branch, you can think of it as an equal sign, right? The branches equal weak. The branches are weak. They'd both be nominative plural in this case because infirmi, the adjective, is describing rami, right? So he shouts to Sextus and he says, be careful, Sextus, right? The branches are weak. Subito, Marcus et Cornelia magnum fragorem audiunt. So suddenly, Marcus and Cornelia, there's my subjects, right? They're both ending in nominative singular endings, US and A, right? And it's totally fine that they are both singular people. Together, they're forming a plural subject because there's two of them, which is why my verb audiunt ends in NT, right? They hear. So I'm saying Marcus and Cornelia hear magnum fragorem. That's my direct object. They hear the loud crash, right? And again, don't get thrown off by the fact that magnum ends in a UM and fragorem ends in an EM. It's totally fine. You're going to learn more about noun-adjective agreement, which is what we call this, in a later chapter. The only reason that they have slightly different spelling is because fragorem is a third declension noun. And when you use adjectives with the third declension noun, sometimes they're not going to match up in terms of the spelling, but they're both accusative singular. So they go together, which is the important point here. All right, so think of them both as the direct object for now. What do Marcus and Cornelia hear? They hear a loud crash, right? Then it keeps going, sextus ex arbore cadet. Sextus is my subject. What is he doing? Cadet, he's falling. And again, cadet ends in a T because it's matching with sextus. He falls. Ex arbore, out of the tree, right? Because the branches were weak, so he just falls out of the tree. Ridet Marcus et Cornelia, sed non ridet sextus. This sentence is good because, again, it's showing you that the word order isn't at the important thing here. It's not as important as you might imagine. The subject is Marcus et Cornelia. They both end in nominative singular endings. So Marcus and Cornelia are laughing, rident, right? And again, notice how rident ends in an NT because, again, even though Marcus is one person and Cornelia is one person, together they're making a plural subject. So they laugh. But sextus, right, and again, but the conjunction said is giving you kind of a separate clause or a separate thought in your sentence. So we have a new subject and a new verb, right? Sextus is my subject, non ridet, he doesn't laugh. So when you put it all together, that last line is saying Marcus and Cornelia laugh, but Sextus doesn't laugh. So that's the translation. Again, feel free to pause the video, rewind it, go back and listen to it again. But the key thing here, you want to build on what we've been talking about. Pay attention to subjects and verbs. If my subject is singular, my verb needs to be singular, right? The verb endings we've been seeing are really T and NT. In this chapter, they threw in a new one, S, with that line, Marce cur tu non arborum ascendis. When your subject is you, too, the verb ending changes to an S. Not a major deal, it just means you are doing something. So pay attention to your verbs, your subjects, and again, you want to pay attention to how all the nouns are being spelled. If they're nominative, meaning they end in an A or a US or an AE or a long I, that means they're the subject. Now you have direct objects, accusative case. It's AM, UM, EM. It means they're not doing anything, something's happening to them. Okay, so just make sure you process all that and you'll be fine. Keep practicing. And again, read this out loud so you can hear the difference between words like Marcus and Marcum, right? Or sextus and sextum. When you hear it, you'll catch on quickly that there's something different and it'll help you with your translation. Okay, good luck. If you have any questions at all, again, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll help you however I can.